Welcome to the Gabrielle Spencer Power Up Your Abundance podcast. Unlock and unleash your abundance by getting your no-charge MP3 at uanow.net/unlock.
Hello and welcome. This is Gabrielle Spencer. Thank you for joining me today for Power Up Your Abundance. I am so excited that you are here to receive the information that we're going to get from our special guest, Martine Boucher. Martine is a breast cancer survivor. She's a nurse, a health coach, and creator of Fruit of Life. She has over 30 years in the healthcare industry and has coached hospice and oncology patients through their cancer journey. She uses her many years of healthcare and nursing experience along with her own personal cancer crisis journey to empower people to release their fears, their emotional and physical pain from their own health crisis, and to help them regain and create a whole and fruitful life. Welcome, Martine, and thank you so much for being here today.
And thank you so much for inviting me on your show. Thank you.
We're excited to have you here because cancer, unfortunately, is really prevalent, and younger people are being afflicted with it, and it's a crisis, and it's a crisis not just for the people who are experiencing it exactly, they're the ones with the cancer, but it's also, involves their family, their loved ones. So from that, can you tell us with your own cancer journey how you dealt with that, how your family helped you, what it was that helped you to realize there's another way? And tell us what that is. What did you find that to be for you?
Absolutely. Yes. I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer in year 2016. And as you mentioned, as a nurse who has been working side by side with patients who were diagnosed themselves with cancer, you find yourself invincible. You're caring for the patient, and cancer will never touch you. And what happened is when I was diagnosed, first of all, let me go back. I found a mass on a Saturday morning, I will still remember, under my left breast. And it was just itchy, and I happened to go scratch, and I found a small lump. My first reaction was that there's nothing there, but of course I kept investigating, and there was a lump. And I chose not to tell anybody at the time because I was starting to be afraid, scared, but didn't want to make my family afraid. I have 4 children, and I called my gynecologist, and I asked to see him as soon as possible, and they gave me an appointment on the Monday that afternoon. And he tried to make it light, said, it could be anything, not trying to worry me because he wasn't sure. And I went ahead with the biopsy. And the day, I still remember that day when I went back to the gynecologist's office and got my results. He told me it was a very aggressive invasive ductal carcinoma. So what it means is the cancer was in my milk duct. That's where it started, and it already had spread to outside the milk duct. So that was stage 2. At that time, there was no evidence of cancer anywhere else. So while I'm in the doctor's office, I really worked very hard to keep my emotions in check and not to show any emotions at all. But when I went to my car, I just cried, and I stayed there and just cried. And at that time, I felt like I just couldn't see when you're, in life, you have dreams, you have visions, everything crumbled and everything was like absent. There was no continuity in my life. It's like there was nothing there. It was just a black screen. So went back home. So when I came back home, I decided to share it with my family and the important people in my life. And as a cancer nurse, if I could call myself, and as a hospice nurse, I have seen so many people diagnosed with cancer, athletic women, eating well, exercising, who had cancer in their uterus, athletic man, non-smoking, who had cancer in his lungs. And I always questioned, why is that? But that was it. It didn't go any further. So now that it happened to me, I really wanted to know, why did I have cancer to begin with? And that brought me in this journey of searching and reading, and my family included. This is what brought me today, being cancer-free, and through doing alternative treatment to cancer, even though I understood the traditional treatments, which was chemo, radiation, and immunotherapy and surgery. And for me, it just didn't address the root causes. And this is why I went on another route and decided to do alternative treatment. But I must say, I did agree to meet with an oncologist. My primary care physician begged me to meet with an oncologist to at least have a talk with the oncologist and to explain to me everything. Even though I knew all about it, when you're the patient, you need to really hear it from a professional. And I agreed to have a lumpectomy because I had two metal pieces that they had put during my biopsy, two metal pieces, and I wanted that removed. And that's where we're at.
Okay. So how did you then, after meeting with the oncologist, and how did you determine your course of action that you wanted to take after the lumpectomy? What did you research, and how did you determine what it was you felt was right for you to pursue in order to become cancer-free?
All right. So good question, because after my lumpectomy, I had a scan, and guess what? The cancer came back exactly, and we're talking about 4 weeks after my surgery. The cancer came back at the location where the tumor had been. And I had cancer in my lymph nodes throughout my breast of my lymph nodes. I had it under my arm, and I had lesions on my liver. And so made extensive research and realized that cancer is not just the physical. So you don't have just the cancer cells here in the physical body where you have tumors. Cancer also is the mind and the spiritual. Because, and let me share a little bit about my story, because through the reading, I came to realize that cancer comes when you have deep-rooted resentment, anger, guilt, blame, shame. Now, prior to my cancer diagnosis, I wasn't aware of that at all. I just knew that, hey, you have cancer, you go surgery, chemo, radiation, therapy, this is the way to go. But through researching and reading, I realized that cancer has three components here. So if you just heal, if you just do the chemo and radiation, it doesn't address the emotional and the mind part, and it doesn't address the spiritual. So if I can share a little bit about my past history as far as the traumas in my life that I believe were definitively part of the diagnosis of cancer. I was, as a young first of all, I was raised in a middle-class family, and my youth was pretty uneventful, happy times, everything went well. But in my young adulthood, when I became a nurse and I started practicing, I had just started practicing, I was raped by a healthcare professional. So that started this stage. I was raped, and I never told anybody, kept it to myself, but I felt blame, shame, I felt anger, resentment. But because I'm a person who doesn't want to live being angry every day, and I said, I'll forget it. I'll just put it aside. I just won't remember it. And that took time, but after a couple of months, I said, whatever. And then the person who did it never apologized, ignored me completely, like as if nothing had, he had used me for whatever. Then, not too long after, went through tremendous periods of being humiliated. I put myself in a situation where I would get tremendous humiliation at a deep core, whether it was sexually, whether it was, everything happened. So became pregnant, but it was a very bad situation, had to get an abortion, and the list can go on and on. So, and then got married for the wrong reasons, had 4 beautiful children, went through 10 years later a very, very stressful divorce. And then when I was diagnosed many years later, I was in the middle of working for a job that it was so stressful, but I wasn't managing my stress well. So all these events, now there were happy times in all this. There were happy times, but these events contributed to my cancer. And let me share why. Because cancer, your cells actually are constantly listening to what you're thinking, to your words, right? So when I thought that I had forgiven the person who raped me, when I had forgiven like this abortion, that I love children, and for me I was killing a life, and I had so much guilt around it and so much anger and so much pain that I thought I had forgiven and moved on. It was stored deep inside me, deep inside my cells, and it was eating me alive. So when you're diagnosed with cancer, all it's saying is, listen, something is not working right. Something is not working right, whether it's physically, whether it's your nutrition, whether it's, and I'd like to go into that, Gabrielle, because when you're diagnosed with cancer on a physical level, what it means is that you have toxicity, you're overburdened with toxins. It means that your nutrition, your immune system is weak, because your immune system is made to find any abnormal cells, bacteria, fungus, viruses, and literally destroy it. So because we are all exposed, we all have cancer cells in our body at some point, sometime. Our immune system will just get rid of it without us even being aware of it. So when you've been diagnosed with cancer, you got to say first, okay, physically, my immune system is weak. Why is that? Well, nutrition is the number one factor. Nutrition is, are you eating a lot of processed food? Are you eating, drinking sodas? You have to look, or at your diet. Number 2, you have to look at your stress. Stress lowers your immunity. Stress lowers your immune system. So I had chronic stress, and I wasn't coping well with it. Well, guess what? That wasn't helping my case. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was so stressed with my work. I had no energy to do any physical activity after or before. And I always made homemade food, but now it's choosing to eat cake and chocolate and processed food. It's like I had given up on feeding my body nutritious food. And also, you have to address the emotional part. Am I storing, have I had traumas in my life that I haven't dealt with? As they're thinking, because everybody that has breast cancer or any cancer, it doesn't mean you've been sexually abused or not, abortion, being mistreated when you were a child. There's so many variables, but you have to go back in your life and see what were these events and address them really, really. So for me, for the very first time, I really had to really address them, not stuff them in. It's just really look at them face to face and deal with them.
Right. That is a large part of it, is emotional healing. And the stressors that happen in our current life, those are pointing to you to the areas that need to be healed within you. Those are the trigger events that remind you that there's deeper healing in those areas that need to be done. I totally agree with you on that, Martine. As you know, that's my whole basis as well, is that it's the emotional things that happen to you in your current life those are your reminders that there are deeper issues that need to be healed. So it's
Absolutely.
why this even relates to abundance, because those emotional chaos traumas, they are creating that same chaos and scattering of energy in your current life, which keeps you from any abundance of love or laughter or, self-love and acceptance, your life purpose and passion. I mean, it keeps you from being able to fully manifest those things. And so, yes, emotional healing is number one, healing your heart. So important. And in your journey, you talk about really your heart being hurt over and over. And then you also not recognizing your own shutting down of your heart in order to cope. And so in your own way, then not loving and accepting yourself because you just were ignoring, that those feelings within you that needed to be, healed, right?
Absolutely.
So that's so powerful.
Absolutely. And it reflects in my life as far as finances. I was constantly poor, because like you said,
right.
It just doesn't affect your health. It affects your joy. The only time I would allow myself to have joy was through my children. Because I had this, I guess subconsciously, I felt I didn't deserve to have joy, and
right.
So you're so right. You're so right.
Well, it all is together. I say often, you can't have a one-legged stool. Okay, your stool has to have 3 or 4 really strong pillars to be an effective stool, right? There's no stool that's effective with one leg. And so having just money isn't abundance. Having just health isn't abundance. Having just love is not abundance. When we talk about abundance and what that really means, it means having all the pillars that create an abundant, happy, joy-filled life, where by being those things, you are sending out that higher vibrational energy of completeness and wholeness. And we're going to talk about that next, because your journey is about finding that wholeness from within.
Yes.
And this is what we're saying. This is how you get those pillars in place, releasing the fears that have been created from emotional trauma, right? Which is what you were telling us about first.
Yes.
And then the trigger of your sickness, which is then leading you to realize, holy cow, this is much worse than I thought.
Yeah.
And I have to do something about it. And so now that's the next part, is how did you reach wholeness and heal yourself from, that journey so far? So tell us about that.
So exactly. And this is why all your listeners, I want you to do this. I want you to if you've been diagnosed with cancer, listen to what I'm going to say, because it's so important. I realized through searching, why do I have cancer? As I mentioned, there was a physical, emotional part, but there was also the spiritual part. So going back, I grew up in a Catholic family, and I truly believe, my faith was very strong as an adolescent before I got hurt. And then when I went through all of these experiences, I became like a victim. I turned into a victim mode, and I felt abandoned by God, source, spirit, creator. I felt abandoned. And I was talking to, for me, God, creator, I was talking to him and say, why have you abandoned me? Look at me. Look at me. You've allowed this to happen in my life, and I'm a single parent of 4 children, and I'm struggling here, and my heater broke, and I don't even have money to have it fixed. And it's like all these things I realize now is like playing in the victim, poor me. Yet I had made all the decisions, and I was just reaping, from all my decisions, right? So, and he's always been there, because he's always put in my life either like we say, reading a book, IDs or people. He's always been there. But at the time, I decided to play victim and the feeling of abandonment. And the cancer, which is such a blessing, it's such a blessing in disguise, as I said, is to stop and look at yourself on a physical, emotional, and spiritual, because this is the key. You've got to heal that spiritual component for whatever it is for you. You know, go take a walk outside and look at this amazing nature, hear the birds and look at the trees, and this is spirituality. You know, everything is so amazing. And for me, it was reconnecting with God. And first of all, I was angry with him. So I had to forgive him. I had to forgive him. I had to forgive all the people who hurt me. I had to forgive myself for all, because I felt guilty. I felt blame, shame, you know, and I had to ask for forgiveness. But that doesn't come, you just don't do it one time and you're done. You have to really keep on working at it, because things will come back to the surface. But forgiveness is the key. And I've heard you, Gabrielle, say this many, many times, you know, for abundance. Forgiveness is the key. And healing cancer, it's a big, big component.
Yes. Forgiveness is the fastest way to raise your vibration. And that is because when we forgive, and we're talking about forgiveness on a deeper level, we're talking about forgiveness on a multidimensional level. Forgiveness will affect your consciousness, your subconsciousness, and your heart, and your spirit. And that's so important, and that's why by forgiving on a multidimensional level, and you do that by working with people who understand this, like Martine, you do this so that you can get as much released as possible, so you can begin the healing process as fast as possible, because I know, Martine, you feel this way, and I certainly do, which is, look, once you identify the issue and how to fix it, let's just get it done so we can move on to the good parts, right? So we can begin to create for our lives what we're wanting. The process doesn't have to be long, but you have to be willing. And that's the next piece here, is being willing to address the areas in a systematic way so that you can have healing, which is what Martine is explaining, is her process created her system. So tell us about your system, the three top things you recommend for people that you work with.
Absolutely. So as you know, I healed my cancer in the non-traditional way, alternative methods and so on, because that was what it was for me. But I also assisted people, my patients, going through their cancer journey, going through the traditional way. And I don't want to say, there's nothing right or wrong here. All I'm asking to all your listeners is to be informed. So look into what's out there and what resonates to you. And that's what's the most important, because even the oncologist, when I met the oncologist twice, and that was it, because for me, there was no need for him or me to meet with the oncologist again. But he told me, you know, because I didn't want chemotherapy and radiation. So he told me, if I gave it to you, I don't even know if it would work, because you didn't believe, you know, I just didn't want it, you know, and that was my choice. So number one, do research, read, and make an informed decision. Discuss it with your family, your support system, your friends. But at the end of the day, it's your decision, because when I first talked to my children about my decision of going the alternative way, oh my goodness, I have 4 young adults now. They didn't respond the same way. I had some who were very opposed because they were afraid. They didn't want to lose me, right? And keep the communication going. So once you with all of your children or family members or friends, discuss what you want to do, how you want to approach your cancer, and talk. Keep that communication going because you need that support. You need the support. So that's number one. Number two, start immediately. Look at what you eat. So basically, our cells, our immune system, our cells, our organs, all your body, we're made about 60 to 70 trillion cells. They need good food to be healthy. So you've noticed when you cut yourself, they heal. So our body is naturally made to heal itself. When you have cancer, it wants to heal it. It does. It's not working against you. It's working for you, but you got to give it the tools. So number two advice is food. Try to eat as much as raw food, such as a big salad, colorful salad, and you can juice, meaning you put in, kind of a ninja or whatever it is, a juice to make of raw vegetables. You eat fresh fruits. Try to get organic as much as possible. If you eat meat or poultry, you want to have free range, no grass-fed, and raised by good farmers who take good care of their animals. And exercise, take a walk outside, but do it in a way of you look at the nature and you listen to the birds, and it's an amazing place to be, while you're walking or bicycling or swimming, but stay active. And number three would be practicing mindfulness. There's so many things to help with the mind, meditation, and being kind to people, practice being mindful and what you say to people, or, how you address events, and work on the forgiveness. Forgiveness, what it means is letting go of the event. That's what forgiveness means. So yes, I've been raped. It's been done. I don't need to repeat it and relive it for years and years and years. It's done. Let it go. Just let it go. That's what it means, forgive the others. Just let it go. And forgive yourself, because I'm thinking, why, maybe if I hadn't been in that space at that time, it would never happen. Or the abortion, the guilt, it's done. And at that time, it had to be done, and it is what it is for whatever reason. Let go of the event. Learn to forgive yourself. Learn to forgive others, and ask for forgiveness, because you've done things to people, you've said things to people, and that's what I recommend for everyone. And wishing well for everybody.
You're exactly right. Letting go is a lot easier when you're able to forgive not just the event and the person, forgiving yourself, maybe, like you said, for being in that place at that time, forgiving yourself for putting yourself in that position or making the choice that created that situation. Whatever that is, forgiveness, there's so many areas to forgive, and it's so important because we don't always realize that the forgiveness piece has many complex parts, like you just said. I mean, forgiving yourself, forgiving the perpetrator, forgiving God, those are all important steps in that healing process. So I'm really grateful that you've brought it up and mentioned it as part of your journey, because I think that sometimes people think, well, I have forgiven, why hasn't that done anything? And the answer is because there are other aspects that you need to forgive that are involved, and deeper layers that are needed to be addressed. And that's why you would work with someone like Martine, because she's able to assist you to reach those and understand where those areas are needing to be looked into. And that's what's important when you work with somebody who's not only done the journey, but has all the aspects of that journey that they understand, from the medical side and the nutrition and the spiritual and the healing. I mean, cancer is not one-dimensional, unfortunately. It has many moving parts.
Yes, and that's what the majority of people are not aware of. And for me, it's all about letting people know it is multidimensional. And once they understand that, the healing occurs at the root. That's where you want to do it. You want to heal the cancer at the root and restore wholeness in your body. And that's what my journey is about, assisting others.
Well, yes. I mean, and so here we are. It's not even 2 years since
yes.
You were first diagnosed. So that is an amazing recovery,
yes.
Martine. That's
yes.
really profound.
I want to share this blessing.
Well, you are sharing it and being here and talking about your journey, how, just in your own current life, that things, occurred to keep triggering and triggering and triggering until actually it turned into physical illness. Yeah. And then the areas that you had to face and change your life in order to make the adjustments needed and to become cancer-free. I mean, that's so commendable and really quite an inspiration. Mm. So I thank you for coming on today and sharing that journey. And we want to offer to people, how can they get in touch with you to assist them on their path and to be able to begin working with you and experiencing how you work?
Absolutely.
Go ahead and tell us.
Yes, well, absolutely. So you can reach me at sacredfruitoflife.com. And I developed a 12-week program. You have to work week after week after week, one-on-one, to move forward to the healing that I've gone through myself, that work.
Great. So people can contact you through your website,
sacredfruitoflife.com.
sacredfruitoflife.com. All right. Thank you so much, Martine, for being here today. And thank you to the audience for listening and joining with us and allowing yourself to receive the information and the healing energy that we are sending through our highest vibration of love and light to you. Have a wonderful day. Much love. Namaste.
If you are ready to work with Gabrielle and open your heart to unlimited abundance, go to uanow.net/apply.